Jack Harlan's gloved hands gripped the auction gavel's echo, still ringing in his ears. $24. That's all it took to claim the hulking 1960 school bus. Its yellow paint faded to a ghostly ochre under the relentless Midwest sun. He towed it to his cluttered workshop on the edge of Eldridge, Iowa, where cornfields whispered against chain-link fences, figuring he'd flip it for parts or restore it for some nostalgic collector. But as he circled the beast, flashlight beam cutting through dust motes, his locksmith's instincts prickled. The back seat panel, warped and sealed like a forgotten vault, didn't match the rest of the decay. He wedged his pry bar in, muscles straining against decades of neglect. The metal groaned, then gave way with a snap. What tumbled out wasn't moldy cushions or lost homework. It was a cascade of crisp, yellowed certificates, stacked in tight bundles, edges sharp as secrets. Jack froze, heart thudding like a jammed lock. Bearer bonds. Vintage ones from the Treasury's golden era, serial numbers gleaming under his light. He scooped one up, tracing the elegant script. $1 million face value. His rough jaws trembled. Dozens, no, hundreds, piled high enough to bury a man. If you're hooked on this unraveling mystery, smash that subscribe button right now. Share this with a friend who loves hidden fortunes. And drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. Let's build this community together. Jack slammed the panel shut, breath shallow, scanning the workshop's shadows as if eyes lurked in the corners. Eldridge wasn't the kind of town for windfalls like this. He was 47, divorced, with a daughter in community college and a mortgage chewing his savings like termites. Locksmith gigs paid the bills, picking car doors for frantic soccer moms, rekeying rentals for slumlords. But dreams? Those rusted away years ago. He hauled the bundles to his workbench, spreading them under the fluorescent hum. Quick math on his phone, 267 million, give or take. Untouchable wealth, redeemable anywhere, no names attached. Bearer meant possession was ownership, pure anonymous power, but doubt coiled in his gut. These weren't fresh prints. The paper whispered of 1960s issuance, tucked away during the bus's last run. School buses didn't haul fortunes. Someone had hidden them here, deliberate and desperate. Jack paced, boots scuffed oil stains, mind racing through scenarios. A heist gone cold, corporate embezzlement from the farm boom days. The bond's edges bore faint watermarks, institutional seals from Chicago vaults. He knew the law. Whispers of mid-century scandals where tycoons vanished liquidity overnight. One name surfaced in his memory. Harlan Voss. No relation. A grain magnate who'd imploded in '62 amid rumors of vanished assets. Voss's empire crumbled after a fleet of buses disappeared from his company lots. Coincidence? Jack's workshop suddenly felt exposed, the Iowa wind rattling the garage door like impatient knuckles. He locked the bonds in his industrial safe, combination etched in muscle memory from 1,000 jobs. Sleep evaded him that night, sprawled on his sagging couch with a half-empty beer sweating on the table. What if they were marked, traced? Redemption meant banks, questions, federal eyes, cash them piecemeal. Risky. Patterns flagged fraud. Sell on the black market? He wasn't wired for that life, but temptation gnawed. Visions of his daughter's tuition vanishing, a cabin by the Mississippi, freedom from the grind. Dawn crept in, grey and unforgiving, as he brewed coffee strong enough to strip rust. First move, research without a trail. His old laptop, VPN humming, dove into archives. Forum threads flickered alive, ghost bonds, urban legends of unredeemed millions floating in attics and junkyards. One post chilled him, a 1963 audit report, buried in microfiche scans, listing Voss's fleet impounded, then auctioned off piecemeal. This bus matched the VIN in a faded manifest. Jack's throat tightened. Legitimate salvage or a trap spanning generations? He needed an expert, someone discreet. Across town, Milo Kane ran a rare documents shop, ex-professor with a nose for provenance. Risky trust, but isolation bred paranoia. Jack bundled a sample, 10 bonds, innocuous, and drove, eyes flicking to the rear view for tails that weren't there. Milo's shop smelled of aged paper and pipe smoke. The old man adjusted wire-rimmed glasses, scanning the certificates with a jeweler's loop. "Primo stock," he murmured, voice gravelly. "Voss issue, all right. Presumed destroyed in the scandal. Redeemable, but—" He trailed off, meeting Jack's gaze. "Feds watch these like hawks. Patterns trigger audits. You holding more?" Jack nodded once, stone-faced. Milo's laugh was dry. "Boy, you just bought yourself a shadow war. Walk away rich, or dig and vanish." Back home, Jack reinforced the safe with fresh chains. Mind a whirlwind. The bus sat outside, innocent relic, but now a Pandora's chassis. Calls started that afternoon. Unknown numbers pinging his burner. Coincidence? Or had the auction whispers spread? Tension knotted his shoulders as dusk fell, the first real test looming. What price for silence? Subscribe for the twists ahead, like if you're in on this fortune hunt, and comment your guess, who hid them first. Jack shrugged his shoulders as dusk fell, the first real test looming. What price for silence? The bonds lay bundled in the back seat like forgotten promises, their edges yellowed, but the figures crisp. 267 million staring back at him under the flickering beam of his flashlight. He zipped the duffel bag shut, heart pounding a rhythm against his ribs, and slid it under the bus's warped floorboard. No one at the junkyard had noticed his frantic glances earlier, but night brought shadows that whispered doubts. He fired up the old engine, a guttural cough echoing across the lot like a warning. The bus lurched forward, tires crunching gravel, as he eased onto the empty county road. Harlan, Kentucky, slept under a blanket of coal dust haze, the Appalachian hills swallowing the headlights. Jack's hands gripped the wheel, knuckles pale. $24 for this relic at the scrap auction, practically a steal until he pried open that back seat during cleanup. Who stashes treasury bonds from the 60s in a school bus? Cold War relics? Black market ghosts? His mind raced through possibilities, each more tangled than the last. The dashboard clock ticked past 8 p.m. He needed a plan before dawn cracked the sky. Pull over at the first motel. Call his ex-partner, the one who'd ghosted him after their last big score. No, trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. Instead, he veered toward his workshop on the outskirts, a squat metal shed ringed by chain link and rusted locks he fixed for locals. If you're hooked on this unraveling mystery, hit that subscribe button now, share with a friend who's chasing hidden fortunes, and drop a comment. Where are you watching from tonight? Inside the shed, the air hung thick with oil and metal shavings. Jack dragged the duffel from the bus, muscles straining under the weight of potential ruin. He spread the bonds across his workbench, counting stacks by the glow of a single bulb. Serial numbers gleamed, unregistered but legitimate on the surface. Government-issued bearer style from an era when paper promised endless wealth. A faint inscription on one wrapper caught his eye. For the future. J.M. 1962. Initials. A name. Jack's locksmith instincts kicked in. Locks hid secrets, and these were locked in time. He paced the concrete floor. Boots scuff faint trails. Keep them? Cash won quietly through offshore channels? The temptation coiled like smoke. He'd scraped by for years, divorce papers still fresh, workshop bills piling like autumn leaves. This could rewrite everything. But silence had a cost. The junkyard owner, Big Earl, had eyed him funny when he towed the bus away. What if Earl circled back, sniffed for more than scrap value? Or worse, what if federal eyes were already on these relics, flagged in some dusty database? Dawn crept in grey jers through the grimy windows. Jack brewed coffee black as midnight, mind-sharpening. He snapped photos of the bonds with his burner phone, no metadata, then stuffed them into a false-bottom toolbox. Time to dig. A quick search on his laptop. Old news clippings from '62. A Harlan scandal. School bus vanished during a miners' strike, rumored tied to union funds siphoned offshore. J.M. could be Jonah Mills, the strike leader who faded into legend, presumed gone after a cave-in. Bonds as nest egg. Insurance against betrayal. A knock rattled the shed door. Jack froze, pulse spiking. Through the peephole, a silhouette in a deputy's hat. "Jack? Harlan PD. Got a tip about that bus you snagged. Open up." His throat tightened. Tip from Earl? Or something deeper? He cracked the door, feigning calm. "Evening, deputy. What's the play?" The deputy, mid-40s with a jaw like quarried stone, scanned the shadows. "Routine check. Big Earl says the bus had odd cargo when you hauled it. Anything I should know?" Jack's smile held steady, but inside gears turned. Lie outright? Bluff with partial truth? The bonds hummed beneath the bench, a fortune one wrong word from vanishing. "Not much, just rusty seats and memories," Jack replied, voice even. The deputy lingered, eyes narrowing, then nodded curtly. "Keep it clean. We'll be watching." Tires crunched away, leaving silence thicker than before. Jack exhaled, sliding the bolt home. Close call. But now the game's board shifted, law on the periphery, bonds burning a hole in his world. He needed allies, or at least misdirection. An old contact in Pittsburgh, fences who dealt in vintage paper, risky, but sitting still was death by inches. By noon, the bus sat disguised under a tarp in the shed's back corner, repainted matte grey. Jack hit the road north, duffel chained to his wrist like a modern shackle. Billboards blurred past, coal towns fading into interstate sprawl. Pittsburgh loomed by dusk, steel skeletons against the sky. His contact, Vic, waited in a dimly lit bar off the Allegheny, nursing a flat beer. "Jackie boy," Vic grinned, teeth yellowed. "Heard you struck yellow jackpot. What's the haul?" Jack slid a single bond across the scarred table. Vic's eyes widened, then hooded. "Hotter than a mill furnace. These scream feds. Who'd you fleece?" "Not fleeced. Found." Jack leaned in. "Value?" Vic whistled low. "Millions. But moving 'em, you'd need a ghost network. Cut me in at 20%. I know a vault man in Jersey." Temptation flared again. Partnership or solo plunge? Jack's gears drummed the table. Trust Vic. The man had burned contacts before, left trails. Outside, rain slicked the streets, mirroring the slipperiness of deals like this. Decision time pressed, heavy as the duffel at his feet. Eddie gripped the duffel strap tighter, the leather biting into his palm like a warning. Vic's text blinked on his phone. "Alley behind Gino's, 10 sharp, no tails." The clock ticked past 9:45. Rain hammered the motel window, blurring the neon sign outside into a hazy red smear. He could walk away now, stash the bonds in a safety deposit box under a false name, wait out the statute on whatever mess they came from. But $267 million didn't hide easy. Feds had ways. Vic had ways too, the kind that vanished problems for a cut. He slung the bag over his shoulder and stepped into the downpour. Water soaked his jacket in seconds, cold jers clawing at his skin. The streets of downtown Philly gleamed like oil, reflecting taillights from passing cabs. Eddie kept his head low, weaving through puddles that splashed up to his ankles. Gino's Pizzeria loomed ahead, its awning sagging under the weight of the storm. The alley cut sharp behind it, narrow and trash-strewn, lit only by a flickering security light. Vic was there, leaning against a rusted dumpster, cigarette glowing like a beacon. Mid-40s, sharp suit rumpled by rain, eyes scanning the dark with predator focus. "You made it," Vic said, voice low, barely cutting the rain's roar. "Thought you might chicken out." Eddie dropped the duffel at his feet with a wet thud. "What's the play? You said connections, real ones." Vic flicked his cigarette into a puddle, where it hissed out. Steam rose like a ghost. "Guy I know, downtown vault, old school, no digital trails. We slice 'em up, liquidate in pieces. Bahamas drop, clean wires. Your 20% clears 8 mil after my fee. He crouched, unzipped the bag part way. Papers gleamed inside, crisp despite the years. Those bearer bonds from the bus's back seat, forgotten fortune from some 60s corporate heist gone quiet. Eddie watched Vic's jurors hover, too eager. You burned Lenny last year. He called you solid till the auditors showed. Vic straightened slow, rain dripping from his brow. Lenny got greedy, you won't. A pause, heavy. Headlights swept the alley mouth, car slowing, then accelerating past. Both men froze, breaths sinking with the storm. If you're hooked on this edge-of-your-seat tale, smash that subscribe button, share with a friend who's into hidden fortunes, and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Let's build this community. Trust flickered in Eddie's gut like a faulty bulb. He nodded once, sharp. Show me the vault, tonight. Vic grinned, teeth flashing white. My ride's around the block. They moved fast, duffel between them, shoulders brushing wet brick walls. The city's pulse throbbed, distant horns, a siren wailing 2 blocks over. Eddie's mind raced scenarios. Vic double-crossing at the vault. Bonds swapped for fakes. Or worse, the buyer waiting not with cash but badges. The sedan idled at the curb, black and anonymous. Vic slid behind the wheel. Eddie took shotgun, bag on his lap like a shield. Engine purred to life, wipers slashing rhythm. Ever wonder where these came from? Vic asked, merging into traffic slick as ice. Bus like that, 60s plates faded, back seat ripped open, a bingo, some exec's rainy day fund, maybe mobbed up. Eddie stared at the side mirror, watching drops race. Doesn't matter, long as it cashes. Vault was in a nondescript brownstone off South Street, basement level, door like a banker's vault but older, cast iron, combination lock scarred from decades. Vic spun the dial with practiced flicks, left 3, right twice, pause, click. Inside, air thick with dust and metal tang. A workbench waited, tools laid out, cutters, scanners, shredder humming soft. First batch, Vic said, pulling a stack. Laser hummed, verifying authenticity, gold seals intact, denominations screaming value. Eddie paced, boots echoing, clock on the wall ticked 11:47. Each bond fed through felt like exhaling a held breath. Then the scanner beeped erratic. Red light. Vic froze. What the... Eddie leaned in. One bond, edges frayed, serial mismatched. Counterfeit? No. Watermark faint, but inscription underneath. Property of United States Treasury. Do not negotiate. Vic's face drained. Planted. Someone knows. Phone buzzed in Eddie's pocket. Not his. Vic's screen lit. Unknown number. Message. Drop it. Walk away whole. Rain outside picked up fury. Wind rattling the tiny window high on the wall. Eddie grabbed the duffel, bonds half-processed, spilling. We're burned. Vic lunged for a side drawer. Gun? Eddie didn't wait. He swung the bag heavy, connecting with Vic's jaw. Crack of leather on bone. Vic crumpled, groaning. Eddie bolted up the stairs, heart slamming ribs. Alley empty, but shadows moved funny across the street. Sedan gone. He melted into the night, bonds weighing him down, every step splashing accusation. Who sent the text? Feds. Original owners? The bus's ghost? Blocks blurred, Philly's maze turning hostile. He ducked into a 24-hour diner, steam fogging glass, ordered black coffee with shaking hands. Bag under the table, foot pinning it. Server eyed him wary but poured. Outside, tires hissed past too slow. Dawn crept grey. Eddie scanned news on his phone. Nothing yet. He needed a new plan. Ditch Vic. Go solo. But solo meant exposure. Bonds burned holes now, not promise. Decision reformed, sharper. Trust no one. Convert quiet. Overseas. First. Lose the tail, he felt prickling his neck. Coffee burned his tongue. Time to vanish deeper. He dumped the coffee cup in a storm drain. The scalding splash echoing like a warning. streets blurred as he darted into a hardware store, the bell jangling behind him. Rows of locks and keys mocked his trade. Tools of entry, now his cage. He grabbed a hat from a rack, low-brimmed, and slipped out the back alley, weaving through dumpsters that reeked of rust and regret. Footsteps? No, just his pulse thundering. He melted into a crowd at the bus depot, eyes scanning for familiar faces. None yet. The bonds weighed heavy in his backpack, disguised as scrap metal from the bus's underbelly. $267 million in faded paper promises, tucked in the back seat like forgotten homework. Who hid them there? A ghost from '64, maybe, fleeing some silent scandal. Didn't matter. They were his windfall now. He boarded a Greyhound headed south, ticket paid in cash. The engine growled to life, diesel fumes thick as doubt. Seated by the window, he watched the city shrink, paranoia gnawing deeper. Every passenger a suspect, the businessman tapping his phone, the woman with the oversized purse. Convert them quiet, he decided. Offshore accounts, no traces. Switzerland first, then vanish for good. But the prickling returned at the state line. A black sedan mirroring their lane, hours ground by, fields rolling endless under a bruised sky. He switched buses in a nowhere town, heart slamming against ribs. Dusk fell like a curtain, motels glowing neon promises. He checked into one under a false name, paying with crumpled bills. The room smelled of mildew and old lies. He spread the bonds on the bed, yellowed edges whispering secrets. Maturity dates long past, but bearer value intact, millions compounded into a fortune. His jaws trembled as he photographed a few, deleting metadata like shedding skin. Sleep evaded him. Midnight shadows danced on walls. A car door slammed outside. He froze, breath shallow. Peered through curtains. 2 figures. Suits too crisp for this dive. Feds, collectors. The bus's VIN had flagged something, he bet. His cheap purchase at the junkyard auction, $24 for a relic, now a beacon. He packed fast, bonds refolded tight, back exit to the railroad tracks, hopping a freight car rumbling north. Dawn broke grey over boxcars, wind whipping his face, hunger clawed, but adrenaline fed him. He ditched the backpack in a river, bonds transferred to a waterproof pouch against his chest, wired a contact from a payphone, old army buddy turned broker, no questions asked. Launder slow, he muttered into the receiver. Cayman's drop next week. Click. Trust no one, but needs must. The train screeched into a yard near the coast. He slipped off, legs jelly. A fishing charter waited at the docks, captain greased with 100. Out to sea, waves slapping like accusations. Below deck he counted stacks by flashlight. 267 million reasons to disappear. But the radio crackled. News bulletin. Abandoned vehicle D. Authorities seek owner. His gut twisted. They knew. Days blurred into salt spray and feigned fishing. The captain eyed him sideways, but said nothing. At night, storms raged, mirroring his mind. Flashbacks hit, prying open the bus door with his picks. Dust motes dancing in sunlight. Back seat cushions slit open, revealing the hoard. Jackpot or curse? Paranoia peaked when a Coast Guard cutter sliced the horizon. He dove into planning. Private jet from Nassau, new identity forged in shadows. Landfall in the islands brought humid relief, but tension coiled tighter. He met the broker in a backroom bar, palms slick. "These cook?" he asked, sliding samples across scarred wood. Broker nodded slow, eyes gleaming. "Prime cuts, but heat's on. Feds sniff bearer relics, move fast or burn." Decision crystallized, no half measures. Full conversion, then ghost. He handed over half, pocketed the rest. Wired funds to dead-end accounts. Freedom tasted like rum, bitter-edged, yet as he boarded a puddle jumper to Europe, that prickling returned. A passenger too still, gaze lingering. The bond's ghosts followed, burning holes deeper than paper, vanish deeper still. If this edge of your seat tail has you hooked, smash that subscribe button, share with a friend, and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Like for he touched down in Geneva fog, pulse steady now, but shadows lengthened. He touched down in Geneva fog, pulse steady now, but shadows lengthened. The locksmith, Elias Crow, gripped his worn leather satchel tighter as he stepped into the crisp alpine air. Jet lag clawed at his edges, but the weight of those faded bonds, tucked in vacuum-sealed folders from the bus's back seat, kept him sharp. 267 million in bearer instruments, issued decades ago by a shadowy Swiss consortium. No names attached, just promise of fortune if he played it right. He'd ditch the bus in a Nebraska scrapyard after prying open that rusted compartment. $24 for the whole relic, listed on a forgotten auction site. Kids' graffiti scarred the yellow paint, but the real treasure hid beneath torn vinyl cushions. Elias, with his lock-picking jeers honed from decades of honest work, had sensed the anomaly immediately, a false panel humming with secrets. Now, here in the land of numbered accounts, the game turned real. A black sedan idled curbside as he cleared customs. The driver, a gaunt man in a charcoal overcoat, scanned the crowd with eyes like polished flint. Elias veered left, melting into the throng of suits and scarves. Heart thudded. He'd spotted tails back in Chicago, two amateurs in a rented Ford, radioing positions. Who knew about the bonds? The bus's original owner, a ghost from 1960. Pulse quickened, short strides, duck into the tram. He rode 3 stops too far, then doubled back on foot through cobbled alleys. Lake Geneva shimmered under sodium lamps, mist curling like jeers. His contact, arranged via encrypted dark web whispers, waited at a nondescript bistro off Rue du Rhône. Victor Lang, ex-banker turned fixer. "Bring samples only," the message had read. Elias clutched 3 bonds, worth maybe 10 million, leaving the bulk in a Zurich locker under a false name. The bistro's door chime swallowed him. Victor sat in the rear booth, nursing espresso, face etched with old betrayals. Mid-60s, silver hair slicked back, tie loosened just enough to signal discretion. "You Crow?" Victor's voice, low gravel. Elias slid in, nodded, placed the folder flat. Victor flipped it open. Ultraviolet pen danced over the paper. Authentic, pre-digital era, untraceable now. His eyes flicked up. But why surface them? These vanished in 62. Corporate heist, whispers say. Boardroom rivals. Elias leaned forward. "Found 'em clean. Old bus, my score." Victor's laugh, dry bark. "Nothing's clean. Holders liquidated assets overnight. Insiders vanished into exile. You stir that pot," ripples reach enforces. Tension coiled. Elias's mind raced. Scrapyard buyer sniffed around. Online auction logs hacked. "Cash half now," Elias pressed. "Rest wired later." Victor paused, drummed jers. 20% discount for speed, but sign this. A waiver slid across, waiving claims, acknowledging origins. Elias scanned it. E-print blurred risks, potential freezes. Audits, his life's pivot, modest locksmith shop, debts piling from his sister's medical endlessness, hung here. Walk away with millions or crumbs. Outside, tires crunched gravel. Headlights pierced fog. "Time," Victor hissed. Slid an envelope. Thick stacks in mixed euros. "Go now. Vault the rest yourself." Elias pocketed it. Bolted rear exit. Alley shadows swallowed him. Footsteps echoed, pursuers closing. He zigzagged boulevards, pulse hammering, short breaths, fade into a late-night cafe. Order cognac, watch the sedan prowl past. Dawn broke grey over the Jet d'Eau. Elias reached the locker. Bonds intact. Victor's wire hit. First tranche, 80 mil clean. Enough to rebuild, enough to vanish. But shadows? He traced the tails. Corporate remnants. guarding legacy fortunes. Not killers, just relentless collectors. Elias burned the samples, shredded manifests, donated the bus husk anonymously to a museum, ghost of its secrets. Back home, Nebraska winds whispered normalcy. Shop reopened shinier. Debts cleared quiet. He hired help, trained an apprentice. The millions layered in trusts, offshore whispers. No flaunting, just quiet leverage. Years blurred. Elias aged into silver, hands steady on picks. One eve, a faded clipping surfaced. Lost bonds surface, windfall or warning. He smiled faint. Fortune favors the patient lockpicker. The enforcers faded, ripples stilled. He'd cracked the ultimate safe. Not for greed, but survival. Complex world, complex win. If this tale gripped you from that dusty bus to Geneva's fog, hit like. Subscribe for more cinematic twists. Share with a thrill seeker and comment, where'd you watch from? Your spot fuels the next lockpick.